Somewhere in the United States, a city disappears every single year. Not to a hurricane, not to a wildfire, not to a factory shutting down, to moving trucks. A city about the size of Huntsville, Alabama packs up and leaves for other states, one household at a time. Most of the people doing the leaving have no idea they're part of a 250,000-person exodus. That's just the worst one on this list. 9 other states are bleeding residents right behind it, for 9 completely different reasons. And by the time we reach state number 1, the story stops being about taxes or weather. It starts being about a company that promised to cover the damage and might not actually be able to. The state losing more people than any other in the country isn't just watching them leave. The insurance plan it's set up to cover homes that no private company will touch is now on the hook for $768 billion in potential claims. It has less than $500 million in the bank to actually pay them. That gap is coming up last on this list, and it's bigger than anything else we're about to cover. Number 10. Connecticut. In 2024, the state mailed out $2.7 billion in pension checks to its retired public employees. 1 in every 4 of those dollars crossed state lines, paid to someone who used to work in Connecticut and doesn't live there anymore. About $250 million of it landed in Florida alone. Connecticut's top income tax rate is 6.99%. Florida's is 0. The math isn't complicated, and Connecticut's own retirees are the ones doing it. It's not only pensioners, either. The median Connecticut homeowner pays $6,643 a year in property tax, more than double the national average of $31,119. That's the 3rd highest burden of any state in the country. Almost 6,000 residents left Connecticut for other states last year, roughly the population of Essex, a small town on the Connecticut River. Not every departure here is a tax story either. Lego's American headquarters left Enfield, Connecticut for Boston in 2025, a state with taxes just as high, which is a reminder that this list isn't always as simple as everyone flees to Florida. Sometimes a company just leaves for somewhere else entirely. Number 9 has America's highest cost of living and loses people at a rate that would genuinely surprise you. Number 9. Hawaii. Open an electric bill in Honolulu and the rate reads about 41 cents per kilowatt hour. The same kilowatt hour costs about 18 cents almost everywhere else in the country, more than double, every month, for as long as you live there. That's just the start. Hawaii's overall cost of living runs about 85% above the national average, the highest of any state by a wide margin. It shows up fastest in housing. The median single-family home costs $950,000, which takes more than 180% of the state's median income to afford under normal lending rules. A starting Honolulu public school teacher earns about $70,000 a year, which is only about 65% of what the state itself defines as the income needed for affordable housing there. Then there's Maui, 3 years after the Lahaina wildfire. Tracked tax records show hundreds of residents still leaving the island entirely, even as tourism and rebuilding both continue. Put it all together, and Hawaii loses residents to other states, at a rate of about 6 per thousand every single year. That sounds small until you compare it to California, the state losing more people than anywhere else in America by raw headcount. California's rate is about 5.8 per thousand. Hawaii's is worse. Number 8 isn't losing people to cost of living at all. It's the exact opposite problem, a state everyone assumed was still winning. Number 8. Colorado. 10 years ago, Colorado was the 3rd best state in the country at pulling in residents from everywhere else, behind only a couple of others, and ahead of 47 states. In the most recent count, it ranks 44th. That's not a slow fade. That's a state falling 41 places in a decade. Denver itself lost residents to domestic migration in 2025 for the first time since 2021. And here's the part that breaks the usual story. It isn't because Denver got too expensive to live in. Rent in Metro Denver actually fell last year, down to $1,754 a month. The vacancy rate hit its highest point in 16 years, with more than 34,000 empty apartments sitting on the market with nobody in them. Colorado didn't get priced out. It got laid off. Employers across the state cut 5,612 jobs in 2025 alone, up more than half from 2 years earlier. A grocery chain, a defense contractor, a cable company, a chip maker, a scientific research firm, all of them in the same 12 months. A state that spent a decade selling itself as the place ambitious people move to is now the place some of them are quietly moving away from, and the empty apartments are the proof. Number 7 isn't a boomtown that stalled. It's the federal government pulling its own paycheck out of one state faster than almost anywhere else in the country. Number 7. Maryland. In 2025, Maryland lost more federal jobs than any other state in the country except California, 24,900 of them in a single year. 10,300 of those came in October and November alone, right after a wave of federal resignations hit all at once, stretched the window from January 2025 to March 2026, and the total climbs to 29,300 federal jobs gone. That's 18% of Maryland's entire federal workforce, wiped out in about 14 months. That workforce isn't a small slice of Maryland's economy. It's 6% of every job in the state and 10% of every dollar of wages paid. $26.9 billion a year. In Charles County, nearly a third of all household income traces back to a federal paycheck or a federal pension. Montgomery and Prince George's counties alone were home to more than 109,000 federal employees between them. Before the cuts, Maryland's legislature responded to its own budget hole the way state legislatures usually do. It raised taxes. The top income tax rate climbed from 5.75% to 6.5% in May of 2025. Lawmakers also added a new 2% surcharge on capital gains for high earners. And, strangest of all, a brand new sales tax landed on information technology services, the exact kind of business a laid-off federal contractor might try to start next. Unemployment in Maryland climbed from 3.8% to 4.2% in a matter of months. Number 6 isn't losing people to Washington policy, it's losing them to the Gulf of Mexico. Number 6, Louisiana. 2 decades after Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans still has roughly 100,000 fewer people than it did the week before the storm hit. The state overall did eventually recover, and even grew for a few years until it started slipping again. Louisiana has now led the nation in population loss for 2 years running. Shreveport's metro area alone has shrunk from 200,000 people to around 170,000. The economics explain a lot of it. The median Louisiana household earns about $61,000 a year, roughly a quarter less than the national median, ranking 48th out of 50 states. Average weekly wages run nearly 23% below the national number, and the ground itself is disappearing. Louisiana has lost more than 2,000 square miles of coastline since 1932. A football field's worth roughly every hour and 40 minutes at today's pace, slower than the historic rate but still moving. Here's the part that might actually surprise you. None of that shows up as clearly as you'd expect in the domestic migration number that puts Louisiana on this list. 14,387 residents left for other states last year, but almost as many people arrived from other countries, leaving Louisiana's total population essentially flat. So why does Louisiana still rank ahead of 5 other states here? Because the people leaving for Texas and Georgia are largely working-age Louisianans with options. The people arriving are starting over from nothing. It isn't the same population, even when the headcount comes out close to even. Number 5 has the opposite problem. It isn't losing its economy, it's losing its 20-somethings. Number 5, Massachusetts. Since 2000, home prices here have climbed 73% faster than inflation. Household income over that same stretch, up 4%. Run that math for 24 straight years and a state's own workforce simply can't keep up anymore. And the people leaving prove it. Nearly 60% of Massachusetts' net population loss by age comes from residents 25 to 44 years old. That's exactly the group that's supposed to be building a career and starting a family there, instead of leaving it. In the 12 months ending last July, Massachusetts lost more than 21,000 people to Florida and more than 20,000 to New Hampshire, 2 states, 41,000 residents, in a single year. Here's where it gets genuinely uncertain, and it's worth saying plainly. Massachusetts also passed a new 4% surtax on income, over $1 million in 2022. It has pulled in more than $3 billion a year, over double what the state originally projected. Did that tax push wealthy residents out? The most recent IRS data shows about $4.2 billion in income left the state in the first full year after the surtax took effect. But a bigger amount of income actually left the year before the tax existed at all. Even Massachusetts' own financial press admits nobody can prove an exodus yet, one way or the other. What isn't uncertain is who's actually leaving. Not retirees, and arguably not millionaires either. Young workers, priced out by a housing market that stopped listening to what people can afford a quarter century ago. Number 4 has the highest property tax bill of any state in the country, and it isn't close. Number 4, New Jersey. 2 familiar names are on their way out. Samsung's American headquarters is relocating from Inglewood Cliffs to Plano, Texas, taking about 1,000 jobs with it, with the move finishing by the end of 2026. Mars Wrigley, the company behind M&M's and Skittles, is moving its own headquarters from Newark to Chicago, with more than 300 layoffs expected by October of 2026. Those 2 are just the headline names. For the 8th year running, more people move out of New Jersey than any other state in America. 62% of every move across its border goes outward, not in. The average New Jersey property tax bill is now $10,570 a year. The lowest average bill in the country, in West Virginia, is about $1,081. One New Jersey tax bill is worth almost 10 West Virginia tax bills. New Jersey's top income tax rate is 10.75% for anyone earning over $1 million, the fourth highest rate in the country. By one major ranking, New Jersey has the second worst overall tax climate of any state, ahead of only New York. But New Jersey's story isn't as simple as everyone running for the exit. The same study that ranks it the most departed state also finds it's quietly become a landing spot for younger professionals. About 1 in 5 inbound movers are between 18 and 34, treating New Jersey as what researchers call a launch state. People are leaving New Jersey and arriving in New Jersey, just not the same people and not for the same reasons. Number 3 has a pension debt so large that no other state comes close. Number 3, Illinois. Here's what probably isn't causing this one. Chicago's homicide rate fell 30% in 2025, the lowest total the city has recorded since 2014. The city of Chicago itself actually gained residents last year, about 5,250 of them, its third straight year of growth. So if it isn't crime, and the state's biggest city isn't even shrinking, what's actually driving 40,017 people out of Illinois in a single year? Pension debt. Illinois carries about $143 billion in unfunded pension liability, less than half of what it actually owes, funded at under 48%. That's worse than every other state in the country, and not particularly close. Someone has to cover that gap, and Illinois covers it through property taxes, roughly double the national average. Illinois trades the single highest rate in America back and forth with New Jersey, depending on which year you check. Boeing left Chicago for Virginia in 2022. Caterpillar left for Texas the same year. The hedge fund Citadel left for Miami a few months later. In July of 2026, True Value, a hardware wholesaler headquartered in Illinois for 78 years, announced it's moving to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Indiana offered it $3.4 million to make the jump. None of these are people fleeing a dangerous city. They're taxpayers and employers doing arithmetic on a pension bill that isn't their fault and isn't shrinking. 40,017 people is almost exactly enough to fill Wrigley Field. Number 2 loses that many people roughly every 15 weeks. Number 2, New York City resident in the top tax bracket pays a combined state and city income tax rate of almost 15% before the federal government even takes its share. That's the highest combined burden of any city in the country. By the Tax Foundation's ranking, New York has the single worst overall tax climate of any state in America. Worse than New Jersey, worse than California, worse than all 50. The math shows up in the state's own migration numbers, and they don't move in a straight line. New York lost 216,778 residents in 2023. The bleeding slowed to 119,231 the following year. Then it got worse again, back up to 137,586 most recently. Not every high-profile departure actually happens the way it's announced. Foot Locker planned a headquarters move to Florida in 2024, signed the lease in early 2025, then canceled the entire relocation that November after a corporate acquisition changed the plan. Other moves are quieter and more real. Hedge fund manager Larry Robbins relocated personally to Florida in 2024, though his firm kept most of its roughly 50 New York employees in place. Even Apollo Global Management, one of the largest investment firms headquartered in New York City, is now scouting a second headquarters in Texas, Florida, or Nashville, while keeping its New York address for now. 137,186 people is almost exactly the population of New Haven, Connecticut, in the same state that opened this list all the way back at number 10. Just for scale, New York loses a New Haven's worth of residents every single year. Number 1 loses more than 91,000 additional people on top of that. And the reason isn't about taxes anymore. It's about who's still willing to insure a house. Number 1, California. 229,077 people left California for other states in the most recent count. That's more than any other state loses, more than New York and Illinois combined. It's close enough to the population of Huntsville, Alabama that if you swap the two cities, almost nobody would notice the head count was off. That's the fact this video opened on. Here's the one it was building to. In 2014, the state created Insurer of Last Resort, the FAIR Plan, built to cover homes that no private company will touch, covered under 2% of California's homes. Today, it covers about 5%, and its total exposure to potential claims has passed $768 billion, up 250% since 2022. The FAIR plan currently holds somewhere between $200 million and $400 million in cash to cover that, $768 billion in promises, under $500 million in the bank. In October of 2026, the FAIR plan raised rates by an average of 29.1%, after asking regulators for almost 36%. It isn't only the state's own plan under pressure. In April of 2024, State Farm announced it would not renew 72,000 California policies, 30,000 of them single-family homes, including about 1,600 houses in a neighborhood called Pacific Palisades. 9 months later, Pacific Palisades burned. Between the Eaton and Palisades fires alone, insurers eventually paid out more than $20 billion across roughly 40,000 claims. Travelers raised rates on more than 329,000 policyholders. Allstate and Chubb both stopped writing new high-risk policies altogether. None of this is happening in a state that's short on other problems. California's top income tax rate is 13.3%, climbing higher still with additional surcharges, the highest in the country by a wide margin. By one major ranking, California has the third worst overall tax climate of any state. Tesla left for Texas in 2021, Chevron left for Texas in 2024, Oracle left for Nashville, In-N-Out moved its corporate headquarters to Tennessee in 2025. None of those companies named insurance as the reason, but a state's own backstop for the housing market is carrying $768 billion of exposure on less than $500 million of actual cash. The departures start to look less like a trend and more like a forecast. 10 states, 10 different reasons, a pension bill in Illinois, an insurance market in California, a federal paycheck that disappeared in Maryland, a housing market that stopped listening to incomes in Massachusetts. Not one root cause, but one shared trait. Every state on this list is still choosing, year after year, not to fix the specific thing driving its own residents out the door. Ohio and Michigan didn't have a secret. They just stopped losing people and started gaining them back. Inside the same 10 years these 10 states spent getting worse. That's the actual headline here. Not that people are leaving, but that leaving turned out to be the easier problem to solve than staying would have been. If your state made this list, are you staying, or are you already looking at listings somewhere else? And if you already left one of these 10, what was the actual final straw?